Welcome DAFRiders. I'm Dave Brandt, the Motorcycle Safety Program Manager for the Department of the Air Force. Over the last few podcasts, we've been talking about the rider mentality, and today we're going to discuss what that means. Joining me today, Dr. Love, a very familiar face.
Dr. Love here, and I am the Air Force Risk Management Program Manager and have a little bit of experience riding bikes back in the day.
Okay. What did you ride?
Well, I started out back in the day when I was at Auburn University. You couldn't get parking anywhere. I know it's even worse now, but back then it was hard to get parking. So I bought a little Honda, probably a 200, maybe a 250, something like that. And I used that just to scurry around the campus, and that was about the gist of it. But then I started riding again maybe about 15 years ago. For some crazy reason, I wanted to pick up a scooter, and it was a Silverwing, Honda Silverwing. I think it's 550 or 600 cc, so it would get on up there pretty good. And I rode that for a while, then I sold it, then I bought another one, and then finally I just quit for good, probably about 3 to 5 years ago.
Okay, very good. Well, that's part of what we're going to talk about today. So today we're talking about the rider mentality and what that means. And I think after some discussion, we realized that, well, it can really mean anything. So what is the rider mentality? So as a rider, you can go one of two ways, right? You can either be out there pushing yourself to grow your skills and become more safe, or you can be going out there and pushing your limits and pushing past them sometimes. So I think it really is about the way that you think before you throw a leg over that seat.
Yeah, I would agree. And as far as the rider mentality, how you're going to approach it, it's not just the ride, it's prior to the ride. How much, well, risk management are we doing? And everybody does some risk management. I mean, you come to a red light and you stop. Well, that's risk management because you know you should stop, so you go ahead and stop. And the speed you're going, but then we get into things about how big of a bike do you ride. I knew I couldn't ride a big gold wing and everything, especially at this stage of life, so I didn't want to go that big. But if I'm not going to go that big, then I'm going to limit where I'm going to ride. The ride's more of in-town, slower type traffic and things like that. So the more experience you get, or the more access you have to people that have experience, and the more stories you swap and tell. I think that helps lead to a better mentality about how am I going to approach this whole thing. Absolutely. And you can do, I mean, we talk about real-time risk management. A car pulls out, what I'm going to do. So you got to make the decision then, but prior to then, I can already make some risk management decisions about how I would probably handle it. What are my options? So you can kind of prepare yourself for that. And I know back when I did ride, I knew the conditions that would exist that would, to me, would be, that's a no-go. I'm not riding in that. If I waited until the exact time, I might, waffle a little bit.
Exactly.
But if I look back and say, when I was clear-headed and had no real emotional input about really wanting to do it or not wanting to do it, I said this wouldn't be safe. So I was able to stick to that plan. So nice. Part of your the mental attitude of how we approach it does deal with the safety, and it does deal with setting some parameters before we ever get on the bike.
Absolutely. So it really comes down to knowing what your limits are, which I think on two wheels, a lot of times we push past those limits sometimes. We allow ourselves to get into the mentality of, if I don't have a liter bike, then it's not fast enough. I need 1,000 cc's out there. And I think over the years, I've learned that I would rather have the right bike for the right job, for what the right ride, than the biggest or fastest bike out there. I don't want a 1,000 cc bike if I'm going on a track day. I'm going to be behind all the 600s and 400s that are going to be killing me in the corners. I don't want a dirt bike on the highway. Well, and I don't want to ride my bike, even the adventure bike, I don't want to take out into environments that are way beyond that bike's capability or my skills. So it's really identifying when we're riding past our skills. So that can be hard to do.
And you talk a good point. You talk about, in my experience, I came to realize, well, that's all part of the rider mentality, as in any safety type thing. About the more experience you get, the more times you screw up. Absolutely. Or you talk to somebody that screwed up, you say, I don't want that to ever happen again. I'm not going to allow it to happen. So all of that's important. I mean, and not being overly influenced. The older you get, I think the grumpier we become, and we're not afraid of what people think. If I'm riding with a big group, and I have been, we did a group ride here, and I was on my power scooter, my little 550cc, which, by the way, could beat anybody else for the first 20 feet or so. And we did a ride, I guess it was a 100-mile ride maybe. We went up to around Cuba, New Mexico, went over to Santa Fe and came back. Well, I told them right from the get-go that I had some experience and I was comfortable riding, but if they wanted to ride faster than me, don't worry about it. Let's have a stop point here, here, and here. If you get way ahead of me, which they really never did, stop, have a soda or whatever, and within 5 or 10 minutes, I'll catch up.
Right.
So
ride your own ride.
Ride my own ride. And people that just start riding to get with a big group, you can't ride like somebody that's ridden 15 years. You've got to kind of find your way. And group rides, I always say, put the most experienced person with the least experience and let them know, hey, you're not with them to bring them to the front. You're with them to stay at the back and keep them comfortable, kind of keep them safe, and let them know it's okay. And we had a great ride like that. And toward the very end, they got a little bit ahead of me, but that was absolutely fine. But I'd already made that decision before we ever started the ride.
Good. That's exactly what we're talking about here. So depending on what you ride, I think your mentality is going to change or should change. So not just with time, but what type of bike you're on. So the adventure riders, do you know your off-road limits? Do you know when you're already pushing past where you're comfortable or where your skills are? When it comes to sport bike riders, is my speed exceeding my skill? Or is my skill exceeding my speed? Meaning that if I end up in a pickle here, I know I can skill out of this.
Yeah.
And I may be going a little bit beyond or right at my limit, but I also know that I have the skill to recover and I'm not going too far beyond that.
Yeah, and when you make that decision and you take the worst case scenario, you've actually got to be able to say, okay, what if that does happen? We had an experienced rider here, great rider, great fellow, helicopter pilot. And he did the sport riding things where you're jumping up over the hills. I don't even know what it's all called, but it was competitive type stuff, but it was pretty dangerous. And he did indeed go off the track and had a severe back injury. Now he came back and recovered from all of that, but that was an extreme case of what could go wrong, and it did. So in his risk assessment, he had to accept beforehand that, okay, I know it might happen, I'm willing to accept the risk, and he did. Now, I would venture a guess, first of all, the risk has changed because if he hurts his back again, it could be far, far worse, already sustaining an injury. Plus, he's a little older and wiser, and I suspect he would not do the same thing again. He may not even do that kind of riding anymore. I don't know.
Sure.
But that goes into making your decision. The experiences. And likewise, if you luck out and never have a mishap like that, you may be more prone to do it again and again and again. And that would be your story, and that's what you're sharing to people. So there's a little bit of a dance there as far as making decisions based on your experiences, others' experience. I think we all do well, whatever we're doing, to read a good cross-section of success and failure in any of the adventures we go to, be it rafting, be it people that parachute for fun, I guess skydiving, mountain climbing. If you've been fortunate enough to never have an accident, I think you do well to get on the internet or somewhere and search for stories of what did go wrong and why it went wrong. That's only going to make you better at whatever you do.
Absolutely. And you just hope that you're within those parameters that you can control, right?
Yeah,
so
exactly.
I read something this week that I found interesting. It says we grow by pushing to our limits, not past them.
I would agree with that. And the problem is when you push the limit, how do you know when you passed it? Well, I just had my wreck or what? But within a controlled area, having a coach, a rider coach, or a companion with you, whatever activity you're doing, and they've got more experience, and you trust their ability to judge where you're at, I think that's an aid. Otherwise, if you don't know what you don't know, it's easy to push too far. But again, I really think, especially today, we have so much access to information, the internet and everything. Back in my day, we didn't have all that stuff. But you can educate yourself a lot better, not only on success, but on failure. You can easily do a search for motorcycle mishaps. Or there's so many safety organizations out there. Our websites, Navy has a website, there's DOD websites, there are commercial websites about safety, and most of these cover some pretty good things. And if you keep reading them and you see the same story or the same technique come up everywhere, that's a clue bird landing on your shoulder, whispering in your ear that this is probably valid. So I think everybody can get better if you put a little work into it. And as my father used to say, a little bit of fear is a good thing. I was prone to jump in the water as a young fella and just swim around. It never bothered me. I remember one time we were at the rec center, a city pool, and I went underwater. It must have been about 5 or 6. I was absolutely fine, and he was sitting on the side in a chair, fully clothed, and he dove in to save me, and because he wasn't going to wait on the lifeguard. But I told him I was absolutely fine, and that's what he proclaimed, that a little bit of fear is a good thing, and it is.
And that is true. I think we have some of that naturally, and sometimes in order to improve our skill, we have to kind of push up to our limits. So to me, pushing past limits quickly has diminishing returns once you realize you're in a position that you can't skill your way out of.
Well, I mean, that's absolutely true. I mean, when you're in the middle of about to crash, hey, I pushed past my limits.
Yeah, I might be a little past.
Yeah, that's the point of realizing that. That's why I think it's so good to have somebody with you that's more experienced.
Oh, we're going to talk about that. That's where we're heading right into.
Any activity, sure.
Absolutely. I mean, it's important to grow your skills through the courses and through mentorship from quality rider mentors. And I want to emphasize quality rider mentors. And a quality rider mentor would never push you past your limits, not theirs. They're not going to bring you to their limits. They're not going to push you past yours. And they're going to understand your skill level. So those are the mentors that we need to be looking for. And as we're looking for mentors out there, I think it's important to remember that miles ridden does not equal skill. Years on the highway do not equal skill. Skill equals skill, which means that if you're not practicing and improving on your ability to control your machine, then you're just twisting a throttle, and most people can do that. So that is not what, in my opinion, you should be looking for in a mentor. You really should be looking for someone who is constantly improving their skills and would never say, oh, I've been riding for 20 years and I just know. Or I ride 100,000 miles a year in a straight line, so I know how to control. Well, that may or may not be true. So I'm not saying that those people with that experience or riding like that yearly can't be mentors, because perhaps they are working on their skills. But when looking for a mentor, I think it's important that you're paying attention to how that person rides themselves. Are they constantly improving their skills, or are they resting on their laurels, if you will?
I think that's right. Any kind of mentor you pick in life,
absolutely.
I look at, who do I want to emulate? Who do I want to be like? I like the way that person does that. If I'm going to play a guitar, boy, I like that lick that person just played. I'd like to hang out with that person and learn more. Same thing goes over to riding or any other safety aspect. How are they doing it? Does that impress me? Does the safety aspect, does their confidence level, and does their track record support me choosing them for a mentor?
Absolutely, absolutely. So we're introducing the term BOMS as a almost rider pre-check, and what we're looking for is for you to consider the acronym. So we have our body. Are we physically ready to ride? Are there any physical limitations to me riding today? Am I organized? Am I ready for the ride that I'm going to ride? Do I have the right gear? Is my bike in the right setup for whatever I'm riding today? Am I organized for this ride? And then third is your mind. Is your mind ready? And we separate the body and the mind because we're talking about your brain, right? The big meaty mushy thing between your ears. Is that working the way that it should, or are we distracted? Are we distracted by things going on at home or at work? And not that would necessarily keep you from riding, but maybe just something to consider while you're on your ride. I need to kind of clear that out of my head while I'm out there. A lot like aircrew, right?
Yep,
we leave it at the ladder, right? And then our last letter is bike skills, or bike, and then bike skills. Do I have the skills to safely complete this ride? Am I riding with experienced riders that are way beyond my skill level? Do they know my skill level, or am I just trying to pretend that I'm as good as they may think I am? So it's important, I think, to understand your bike skills. So we're going to try to introduce the bombs concept. So we'll have T-clocks for the machine pre-check, and then we'll have bombs as just something that a rider can run through in their head before they hit out there. Yeah, I know my bike's good to go, but am I? As my body, yeah, I'm good to go, organized. Yeah, I know where I'm going and what I'm doing. And, you know, is my mind in? Yeah, I'm in a good spot. You know, things are good. And then, you know, my skills. I know that today I'm not riding anywhere outside of my skill level, well within it. So I'm ready to ride. A quick check, right? Is what we're looking for. And I know that, you know, all these are some things why maybe some people choose not to ride anymore.
Well, I'll tell you, in my case, I remember very well. And again, I wasn't going cross country, all this stuff. I'd ride it into work on nice days, and I might ride up in the foothills and such like that. But I was riding home one day, and I don't know, I went about a block, maybe a block and a half, and you get that road hypnosis where when I stopped at the light, I said, I can't even remember the last block when I was driving up here. And quite frankly, at my age, my reflexes are a little bit slower perhaps, and I said, you know what, you can't ride a bike like that. I mean, in a car, it's not good to have the road hypnosis. On a bike in town, riding is not. So I got home and told the wife, I said, I'm selling the scooter, which she applauded. And I did. I sold it. Within a week, I had sold that. And again, it's not like my greatest love in life was riding. So I wasn't giving up that much. But I did enjoy what little I did. But I really did a risk assessment and just said, I'm not willing to ride up and down the street here because I know some of these folks aren't watching me. And then if I'm not watching them not watching me, that's just a great setup for an accident to occur. So I did the risk assessment and said goodbye to the scooter. I still miss it a little bit.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, and I know when I'm out there, 90% of my time is focusing on everyone else.
Yes.
So when it comes to that, I mean, your skills and your riding ability can't be in question. It has to be autonomous out there because it does not take much.
Right. And I'm not saying if you have one session like that, you need to go home and sell your bike. But I do think you need to assess your overall skill level, and again, how fast your reflexes are, how much experience you have, and is the benefit worth it? And to me, although I enjoyed riding the scooter, I also enjoy eating an ice cream sandwich, and that's a lot safer. So I'm still eating ice cream sandwiches, but I'm not riding anymore.
Yeah, it's real risk management. Just understanding that you came to a limit, and it just I mean, that's what risk management is, right?
It is.
Cost versus reward. Is it worth it?
That's why you've got to do your risk management and I've got to do mine, because it's going to be a little bit different. And again, the risk assessment will change over the years.
Absolutely.
Certainly my risk assessment when I was 25 was different than when I was 35 and 45. And now that I'm 46, it's a little bit different. So that's to be expected. And if you're not reevaluating, I would question that.
Exactly.
About my skill level. I'll talk to people that talk about they were a championship swimmer and they're not worried about the ocean and stuff. I said, well, how long ago was that? And it was like 40 or 50 years. Well, you're not that same person now as far as ocean swimming or what have you. But it's the same with riding a bike. If you've been riding for years and years and years, I would expect your skills to change, to be better in some ways, maybe a little weaker in other ways. And the important thing is just to realize that.
And I think skills are always moving. They're either improving or degrading at any given time. And I think it's important to remember that when you're out there and you're like, well, I'm just running the grocery store, so I don't need to practice my weaves or an emergency brake, even though it'll only take me a second just to practice and know that I can do that and that it's fresh in my head. I think that, again, those skills are either degrading or improving, and it's your choice. It's your rider mentality, which direction you're going to go.
It just takes a second for a tragic thing to happen. And how many times, I know I've done it, maybe when I've had a little fender bender or something other, I think about, oh, if I had that to do over again, I would definitely look a little further or something like that. But you don't get to do it over. That's the thing. You don't get to do it over. And if you do, if you're involved in a crash, that's good for the next time to have better knowledge, but you can't undo it.
Right.
Hurting yourself, hurting somebody else. So
there's definitely a point of
it all counts.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
Right. Where things just are beyond anything you can recover from. So
absolutely.
You just don't want to be in those situations. Well, I think that's all the time we have, Dr. Love. So thank you, Dr. Love, for joining us today and sharing your riding experiences with us. Really appreciate your insight, and I'm sure you appreciate talking more than 45 seconds.
That's a fact.
Right? New podcast coming soon to the DAFRider page, so stay tuned, and as always, keep it shiny side up. Thanks for joining us today, and we'll see you next time. Thanks, Dr. Love.
All right.
You're a rock star.